My name is Krista, and I am part of the EIC Scaling Club's comms team and the PR team, and we help European deep tech companies with their visibility in international markets. So we have 1 hour of time, and we have lots of things planned, and here is our today's agenda and the schedule. I know that there are several EIC Scaling Club companies joining this webinar, so I will use like 2 minutes to remind about the visibility opportunities for our members. Then I will have about 15 minutes of fame to share my PR tips and tricks on how to improve your company's visibility and just to improve your success rates when you are reaching out to the journalists. And then I will give the microphone to my colleague Julia, who will lead a chat with Lucy and Adam, our dear guests here, two journalists. And we will finish with a short Q&A questions where we will ask your questions to the journalists. So please be active and use the Q&A window in the Zoom to ask your questions. And while we won't probably have time to ask all of them, I have my colleagues, Eva, Iva, and Viesturs, who will also try to answer some of your questions right there in the chat window. So yeah, EIC Scaling Club companies, this is for you. I just wanted to remind you about the visibility opportunities that the club is offering. First off, there are interviews that we are conducting with every single company in the club. And if you haven't used this opportunity, please do. We run like a 30-minute chat. We do a 30-minute chat with every single company, and afterwards we write an article that we published on our website, as well as on our social media, where we have over 7,000 subscribers around different platforms. And of course, we also send it out as a newsletter to our close to 3,000 subscribers. We also recommend that you are active and participate in our in-person events, where we run a communications corner, where we do similar interviews, but we also record them as a video and we publish it on YouTube and other channels for extra visibility. And of course, just another reminder, please keep us up to date about what is happening within your companies. Let us know if you have any news so that we know. And when we are talking to journalists, either at some events or just online, if there's a good fit for you to be featured in their articles, we can make the connection. We just have to know what is happening at your end to do that. So yeah, we will start this by sharing a few PR and media relations tips with the goal to help you improve your success rates when you are with your visibility efforts. And these are some tips and lessons we have learned through experience. So the first one is just for you to remember that PR is more than just a press release. While this is probably one of the most popular PR tactics, there are other tactics as well you can use, and sometimes we feel that they are a bit overlooked. Because especially for deep tech companies, you don't always have like lots of hard news, such as funding rounds, for example. But you have to do PR even in the times when you don't have like any big news. And then it's good to remember about op-eds, for example, where you can write, for example, opinion pieces about topics that you are very familiar with or where you are an expert on. There are human interest stories where you can tell your business story through some person's lens, through their experience, and tell your business story, like, for example, how you came up with the idea for your company through your personal experience. You can also provide comments to the articles the journalists are already writing. And for that, we always recommend that you follow a few industry journalists on social media, where they very often post call for sources when they're looking for experts for their articles, or they are looking, for example, for some case studies. Then there are stage presence at conferences. You can organize events for the press around some milestones at your company. And also perhaps your product is generating some data that you can extract and then analyze them and make conclusions about the industry, about users that are using your solution, or etc. So there are just many other opportunities to do PR apart from just press releases about hard news. Tip number 2 is just to know what makes a good story. And every good story, it usually has 4 characteristics, 4 components. First of all, it is timely. It is related to something that is happening right now. Either it's some current trends or some events that the press is already covering. It has to be relevant to the interests and agenda of the outlet's audience. For example, if you want to pitch your story to a media outlet that's based in the US, you have to think about the ways how to make it relevant for the US reader. Your piece of news, your good story has to be insightful, regardless if it's a news announcement or if it's an opinion piece. There has to be something new, some new information, or at least a different take on a topic for the press to be interested in it. And of course, it has to be engaging. And by engaging, think about what kind of stories make people feel something, feel some emotions. They can be excited, they can be happy, they can even about stories that make people feel some emotions. And these are the stories that media likes, because of course, when there are some emotions involved, then you as a reader as well, of course, are there are better chances that you would be clicking on the story, and that helps the media as well. Tip number 3, remember that one angle does not always fit all. For example, if you are running a news campaign, for example, about your funding round, think about all the different type of media that you are reaching out to, and think about how to change the angle a little bit for each and every single media outlet. For example, if it's a news campaign about the funding round, like in this case, we customized basically the angle for the innovations and startup media, where we focused more on the milestone and the impact that the company is making. For the niche media, we focused on the technology advancement and what makes this technology unique in the industry. And for general news media, which rarely cover funding rounds, just like that, we focused more on the impact and human interest behind the story. So think about the angles for every different type of media, and perhaps you even want to produce several press releases for each type of the media. Tip number 4, please prepare your C-level executives for interviews. Because media rarely want to talk about PR people or marketers, they actually want to hear from the CEOs and other key decision makers at the companies. Media training before interviews is important and very much recommended. As a founder, you have to be able to simply and concisely explain your innovation that the journalist can understand and explain it further for the readers. And what we also can recommend is do like a mock interview with your CEO before the actual interview, when you go through some potential questions that the journalist might ask, and see if the CEO is able to answer these questions simply and concisely. Tip number 5. Please never ever submit AI-generated answers to the journalists that are asking for some written comments. This is just a waste of time for the journalist, and they won't be able to use it anyway. So just don't use AI to prepare answers to submit to the journalist. They know how to use ChatGPT themselves, and if they wanted AI-generated content, they would use the AI themselves. Tip number 6, just be familiar with the PR terms, like the very, very basic one are exclusive and embargo. Exclusive is a story or news that is only offered to one media outlet for them to publish it first. And we would like to really highlight that you cannot promise an exclusive to one international outlet and then offer the same story at the same time to some local media outlet as well, because that is not exclusive anymore. And we've just had a few situations where this has been the case, and then you just have to say one of the journalists that, okay, sorry, we have to take this exclusivity back, and that just doesn't look very well. And then there is embargo, which you can send to several journalists at the same time. And it's basically a story that is sent to journalists under an agreement that it won't go live until a set date or time. And it is very helpful for the journalist who wants to invest more time in writing the story, and they just give them the time to do that. Maybe they want to do some additional research, maybe they want to have a chat with the CEO, or etc. So this is a PR like tactic that you can also use when you have a news piece of news, something to send to the journalist. Yeah, tip number 7, please do not ghost journalists. Top tier outlets, they have very strict editorial standards. They might, for example, have an interview with you and then come back with additional questions, some like fact-checking questions, clarifications, etc. And very often we feel like if you've done an interview, then that your job is done and you can completely disappear. But this is not true. This is not the case. If a journalist comes, you have to stay responsive. You have to answer them as carefully and as good as you can, and as good as you did the first time. And finally, my final tip is try to meet journalists in person at the events that you are attending. Journalists, they very often attend also niche events, and this is a great chance for you to meet the media who are actually covering your industry. And your goal is to introduce yourself, have a chat, very human chat, just about something that that you both find interesting. What we do not recommend is do not like grab a journalist by hand and start hard pitching your news or hard pitching your company and ask them if they're going to write about you right away or if they would like to cover your story idea. Just it's not the right place to do that. You can just introduce yourself. They will naturally ask what you're doing, and then you can introduce your company. And then once you are back to work and back to your normal, like everyday agenda, you can follow up on your conversation and say just like, "Hey, Adam, we had a great chat there and there, and here, by the way, I have this idea. Let me know what you think." Your goal is just for them to recognize your name and connect with them so that when they do receive an email from you, they recognize your name and they would answer, first they would open your email because they receive, some journalists, they really receive like hundreds of emails every day. And if they recognize your name, they would open your email, and the chances that your story would get covered is definitely much higher. So yeah, I quickly ran through all my 8 tips about how to improve your success rates when approaching journalists with your story. And I think all of you are more interested in hearing from the actual journalists who are actually covering technology, from Lucy and Adam. And so I am giving the floor and the microphone to my colleague Julia and to Adam and Lucy. Thank you.
All right. Hello, hello. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here with us. And I would like to welcome to the virtual stage our wonderful panelists. We have Lucy Adams, a technology writer at Tech.eu with a particular interest in deep tech and materials innovation. And we also have Adam Bluestein, a longtime contributor at media outlets such as FastCompany, Fortune, Bloomberg, Businessweek, and many more. So glad to have you guys here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Okay. And so let's kick off with a simple and easy question because you're both tech writers, but that doesn't mean that you write about the same thing. So my question for each of you is, what kind of stories do you particularly like to write about, and what do you cover?
Shall I kick it off?
Go right ahead.
Sure. Okay. So I write for Tech.eu, and we cover everything from space tech to electric vehicles to biotech to agritech. We're really kind of across the board. We're generally focused, or we're most interested in early stage startups from all across Europe, from the kind of big powerhouses and big AI leaders, as well as emerging economies. And basically, I would just say, like, I think we're less picky than other publications in terms of the people that we write about and the companies that we write about. We know that they often have small teams and small press teams. So I would say that when it comes to tech, we just generally want to hear about what you're up to and how it works.
Right. Adam.
I'll jump in. So I guess I'll talk about Fast Company first and me. So I guess my beat is pretty broad and maybe broader than a lot of business and tech journalists. So um, big interests of mine are like biotech and life sciences generally. Um, I'm pretty interested in computing, especially quantum computing. Um, and I guess over the last few years, the things that I'm interested in are kind of defined by like the term deep tech. Um, so that sort of like big, impactful technologies. I'm not particularly interested in like consumer technologies, phone apps, gadgets isn't really my thing. There are people at my organizations who cover those things. I tend to be interested in sort of like bigger, more like science-driven stuff. Um, that said, if it's interesting to me, if there's some kind of a business angle, I might write about it. So like I've written about like TV shows on Disney. I've written about the cannabis industry in the United States. I write about food. So I always just say like pitch me, like tell me whatever you see that's interesting. So like my main beat would be like that deep tech. But if there's something really interesting happening in your city or your region that pertains to technology, innovation, sustainability, I might be interested.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to hear that both of you are super interested in the deep tech side of things because the EIC Scaling Club is specifically focused on deep tech. So everyone uh, in this webinar is your perfect target audience. So I love to hear that. So what I want to hear, and as Lucy, as you mentioned it, spot on, a lot of teams don't necessarily have huge comms capabilities built out into their teams. So we want to take advantage of helping teams understand how to best approach you. So I guess first question for Lucy is what makes a good pitch, and how can they use that pitch, that outreach to catch your attention?
I would say this sounds like such an intangible and vague thing, but I think people generally understand when I say that I'm looking for substance, especially when there are so many press releases today that created with generative AI. Just try and really be very, very concise in what you mean. Try and reduce the hype speak or any kind of like speculative language, and get as many kind of statistics in there, research in there. We're really trying to understand how something works. And, you know, we're not scientists, but at Tech.eu, we do have a level of specialism. And so we're trying to understand where you fit in the industry and where you fit in your sector, and whether or not that technology is transformational and could drive something forward. So yeah, any kind of even links to other articles about the company or funding that you've raised, or anything about the science behind the technology, give us more of that, I would say, and less hype, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. How about you, Adam?
So what makes good pitch? For me, I guess, yeah, I'd agree with what Lucy said. Definitely be concise, be as personal as you can be, meaning that I don't feel that this is just a generic pitch, or that, as sometimes happens, it has another person's name in the intro. Try to do that. Obviously, try to understand who the journalist works for, and pitch something that's, you know, appropriate to that outlet. Yeah, and like, don't. Oh, so there's kind of like a joke now, like I see on LinkedIn a lot, like how everybody starts their press release saying like, we're thrilled to announce dot dot dot. It's like, that's great that you're thrilled. Like, make sure you're telling me why I should be thrilled, and why my readers should be thrilled about this announcement. So make sure that you're able to like provide the context for whatever you're telling me in a way that makes it compelling. So like, don't just drop news in a vacuum. Try to help me understand why it matters in the world or in your particular industry, and why it's actually a breakthrough, unique, special. Yeah, and just like make sure you're doing that that work. But be brief, and if it's interesting, I'll definitely follow up and ask you more about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that insight. And just as a reminder for all of our participants here, if you have any questions for Lucy or Adam, please write them in the question and answer box below, because afterwards we will have time to address audience questions. So definitely type them down there. Now you both sort of touched on what constitutes news, what constitutes a reason to get in touch. But you know, we have different scale-ups who are at different periods in their development. Some might be more early stage, some might be more mature. When is the best moment for them to get in touch with you? Is that, you know, just when they have funding news? Can they get in touch before, pre-funding? When is an appropriate time that you want to hear from these startup scale-ups, deep techs?
Do you want to go with? I can start first. Okay, switch it up. So I guess I would just emphasize that while I may not be able to do something on a company that's very early, so like maybe like sounds like Lucy might cover some companies at earlier stages, like at FastCompany or a big US national business publication. We tend to be looking for companies that have a little bit of commercial traction or some sort of regulatory traction, so an approved drug or some kind of sale or partnership. But if you're not there yet, it's still a good idea to start building relationships. And like, I can't emphasize enough the value, which like Krista alluded to, of like maintaining ongoing relationships with journalists. Like even if you can find, a half dozen people, sorry, who you know, and kind of keep in touch with. Um, I'm happy to talk with an interesting company that's too early for us in general, because I know that, maybe 6 months down the road or a year down the road, they will be ready with the kind of news that we would cover. And then I already know them. I already know their story. So like emphasizing, you know, like because of the industry that you're in, that you have some kind of like insight or expertise that you could share with me. That's not necessarily news about your company that I can use right now, but it's just like building up this trusting relationship with somebody who you can kind of keep going back to and checking in as things move along with your company.
Well, so that's a great idea. And my question would be, how does that look like from a practical perspective? I know that you're at various European tech events throughout the year. That would be one place to meet you. But then what does that look like practically? Does a person reach out to you on LinkedIn and say like, hey, I just want to talk to you and tell you about my tech?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to be at something, yeah, I'll try to meet with as many companies as I can. Just, you can just send me, LinkedIn, or you can find my email on LinkedIn, and just send me a note. I know you're interested in covering X topic. We're in that space. You could say like, give me a quick note, like here's what we do, like kind of your quick elevator pitch in your email. If I can, mm, I can't always, like sometimes I can have a do a call or a Zoom call with somebody. I can't always do that. But I'm happy to like see a quick note, a description of what you do. I'm going to add that to, kind of my ongoing list of things that I'm interested in. Um, and then you're like on my radar. But yeah, if I am at a conference or some kind of live event, definitely, in-person meetings are super valuable. And it's true, we do tend to remember and open up the emails of people that we've met for real.
Yeah. Do you have anything on the calendar for the near future?
I will be at Slush in November, and I'm going to be at Oslo Innovation Week the end of October.
Excellent. So that would be a great place for people to reach out and say, hey, I saw you talking on the scaling webinar.
Exactly.
Okay, so Lucy, what's the best time that you want to hear from a startup, scale-up, deep tech company?
I think the only caveat that I would say is that we don't want to hear about an idea. Whether you have a founding team of 4 people or it's like a proper hyperscaler. We'd love to hear from you. Very similar. I mean, I think Adam took the words right out of my mouth, and a lot of the things that he said there, they were spot on. Just be on our radar generally. Like, it's always great to get an introduction email. We get about 100 actual like valid pitches per day to each of our emails at Tech.eu. So often we can't reply. But I read every single non-spam email, and I think Adam will be the same when I say that, like, this is what I nerd out about in my like free time. Like, these are the kinds of conversations that I love to have. And often when we get those introduction emails, they're from people who are academics and are experts and are really passionate about the products that they're creating. So absolutely introduce yourself. And I need to be a bit more vocal about the events that I'm going to. But if we're ever at an event, I would love to stop and have a conversation if I'm free.
Great. And do you have any events that you know that you're going to be attending?
Yes, incidentally, I'm also at Oslo Tech Week and Slush. And they're the imminent.
Fantastic. Then we can do a webinar reunion. Great. So I'm loving all of this hands-on, very practical, tangible knowledge, and I'd love to build out even more on that. And in Krista's presentation, she was outlining a few terms that are used in the media relations space, which are exclusives and embargoes. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. Do you like to receive exclusives? Do you like to receive embargoes? Do you have preferences? And do you have any strong opinions about how to or how not to go about it?
I can start, Lucy, unless you.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Exclusives. Exclusives are great if we've determined that it's something that that we really care about. So I guess you don't necessarily need to. A lot of people like offer an exclusive from the start. So like we're coming to you with this exclusive opportunity to talk with so and so. And so at the very beginning, I don't know if that exclusivity really matters to me. As I become more interested in your story, then it could start to become more important. And usually when we're talking about something exclusive, we mean I appreciate what Krista said about sort of like pitching a local market and pitching internationally. Although like for us, especially if it's like in a foreign language, I don't care so much if there's some media in your country or region. I'm mostly concerned about competing with our sort of like competitive titles. So like other high profile US business focused publications. So like I don't want something that Wired or Wall Street Journal or New York Times Business Section is also doing. So that's like the kind of exclusivity that matters to me. There's also exclusive elements of a story. So like if you have something really big happening, and this maybe applies to like companies that are a little further along, if they're announcing some big news, they might give me like a piece of the story. So like you can talk to this guy, like someone else is going to talk to these people, but you're the only one who's going to get this piece of the story. So there are ways to sort of parcel out exclusivity. And it's really great to be straightforward about this. So like I've been promised exclusivity and then didn't actually get that, which is really annoying because we'll put a lot of resources into doing something and getting a story out on time, and then to see like, oh well, you actually kind of gave that to somebody else. So be like clear about what you can deliver in terms of exclusivity. With embargoes, it's great to get information early. Um, I'm it's a lot of people send out something that here's embargoed information and they send it to you. And I have a little bit of a pet peeve about that. Like it's a two-way street, and like on anything like an embargo or anything that's off record or on background, that's an agreement between you and the journalist. So both people have to agree to that, right? So like just be aware, like if you're saying like, oh, this is off record, or oh, this is embargoed information, here it is. Just keep in mind like that the other person hasn't necessarily accepted that yet. So like get an agreement that yes, that's okay. And I will honor your rules about that. And then just the other thing I want to say is like off record, we haven't talked about that. That has to be agreed to on background, off record. And even if it is off record or on background, we know what you told us, and so we can still use that information to find other sources to tell us the same information, right? So like if you, whenever you say something off record, it's giving us a lead where then we can do our own legwork and find out what's really going on. So like if there's something that you really don't want to get out there in any way, just keep quiet and don't say anything at all.
Yeah, this is such a good tip to always be mindful of what you're saying to a
Yeah,
journalist, because you never know which moment will end up as a headline.
yeah.
Okay, so the same question for you, Lucy. Do you have any preferences? Do you not like to receive things in a particular way? Do you rather receive an exclusive, an embargo, etc.? And also a question is about embargoes is how much time in advance would you want to receive it? Which is a question I didn't ask Adam.
For us, a week is ideal. I think it's definitely a pet peeve. I mean, as with most publications, a pet peeve at Tech.eu that we receive funding news like on the day, and then we will have had an editorial meeting, we will have planned for the week, and we can't cover it. And sometimes it's really interesting, and it's a shame. Or we will have agreed to exclusives in a similar way, and we have to cover those. And so other stuff gets pushed to the bottom of the pile if it comes through late. On everything else, I would say I'm almost exactly aligned with how Adam likes to receive press releases and his companies. I think if there's one thing that I would add, it would be if you are hesitant or if you're nervous about kind of like giving information on background or anything like that, just ask me or ask whoever the journalist is that you're speaking to, like what those terms mean and what you're agreeing to, because I think there's occasionally a little bit of variation, but just make sure that you clarify before you give the information if you're wondering.
Yeah, no one's interested in doing you dirty, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely, from my perspective, one thing that I've found that works best is that if I have a piece of news, then I will reach out to a journalist beforehand and ask them, hey, would you be interested in an exclusive about a topic related to such and such and such? And if they say yes, then only then I send them all of the information rather than assuming like, hey, here's the exclusive. So that speaks to what Adam was saying about having like the mutual buy-in, not only for embargoes, but also for exclusives. Right. So, okay, now I have a few questions that are specific to Adam and then specific to Lucy. And so, Adam, you're based in the US, but you come to Europe quite often. And so I'm curious to hear from you about differences that you've seen or observed between the US and the European journalism, tech journalism scene. And then the follow-up question to that is that very often that what I've heard from scale-ups and startups in Europe is that they have this notion that it's difficult to break into the US media space, that there's a sort of mindset that they don't want to hear about European tech. And is this the case? So over to you.
Sure. So first of all, I should have said this at the beginning. Apologies for my country right now, overall. It's not all of us. But yeah, I mean, it is true that the media here and the business media tends to be pretty insular and pretty US focused. And the reality is that when it comes to tech companies, many of the biggest companies are in the US. They're sort of the standard bearers in their industries, and like the levels of funding in the US are so out of proportion generally to the funding that you see in Europe. So although that's changing a little bit. So like, raising under $10 million, it like will not no one's gonna care very much about that in the US. Whereas that could be a pretty decent raise in Europe. So that said, there are particular areas and industries that are easier. So, I mean, for me, I mean, I've spent some time over there, and I know that, you know, in deep tech, you know, in that sector in particular, there's a lot happening across Europe. There are centers of excellence in computing, in quantum computing, in AI. There's a lot of good space, defense, and dual use companies. And I can tell you that, you know, from just like my editor's interests, we have a lot of interest in the space industry, in what's happening in defense tech in Europe. The deals and some of the developments in quantum computing are pretty much just as big in Europe now as they are in the US. So, you know, it kind of depends. Like if there's like more of a consumer focused technology, that can be really hard to translate for different country and regional readers and audiences, because a lot of times they'll be like not like a copycat, but you know, a similar sort of like there's a German version of this US company, or there's a Swedish version of this US company, and you're like, oh, this is like this is like that. And so then you just need to be really clear about, well, it's kind of the same, but here's what's different about this one, or here's why it's so significant, or this is like that US company, but it works much better because of these, you know, these particular reasons. So like, but so I'd say like space, computers, like technologies that broadly cross over, like biotech, like these are things that kind of work anywhere. Whereas if you're in like dealing with a healthcare system in Europe through some sort of like platform that integrates with a European health system, that's very particular to that market. And it's going to be something that's hard for a US audience to understand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. That, like, you know, the bolt isn't going to make much of a difference in the States if it's not present there. Okay, thank you. And so my question then for Lucy is, so recently we've seen many European tech news outlets either go completely under or lose a large portion of their editorial teams. So my question for you is, how's that impacting your everyday work? Because as we see, Tech.eu is, and always has been, such a champion of European tech and is still going strong.
It just means that we are busier, to be honest. It means that we're hearing about so many more companies than we ever would before. It means that there's a lot more funding news to cover, unfortunately, which means that there's slightly less time for features. And it also means that our event schedule is generally quite busy as well. So I would still say absolutely get in touch, but I would say that you have far more chance of being successful, as we've touched on, if you are familiar with the stuff that we cover and the way that we cover it. So just, I think, as probably is good advice for anyone who's pitching to any outlet, just really try and make sure that the outlet that you're pitching to is really aligned with the cause that you're pitching for.
Totally. And so my last question before we move on to the audience Q&A, for both of you is your biggest advice for the biggest don't and the biggest do when it comes to reaching out for coverage.
Go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, that's so difficult. I think my biggest do is just kind of exactly what I've just said. Just be really familiar with what we cover and how we cover it. Follow the social media, but mainly read the articles, make sure that you're kind of inhaling that every day to be able to pitch more easily. I think my biggest don't would be don't send random requests for coffee with no context, or like it's the same thing of we just don't have very much time. We're really busy. There's so much interesting stuff to cover. Try and build that relationship, and like slowly and gradually, and try and make sure that we know why we have such a responsibility to our readers. We're not a marketing agency, we're journalists, and so we're trying to kind of represent them and ask questions for them and make sure that you are very clear about why the time that we spend with you, whether that's like in conversation or having a coffee, will trickle down to like them being more informed.
Great. Adam?
So I guess make it personal, concise, and just, kind of as Lucy alludes to, like not to be like we're so important or anything, but like we do get a ton of email pitches every day. Lucy gets a few more than me, but I mean I can get 25, 30 a day, just me. And I'd love to get back to everybody. I can't get back to everybody. I just can't. So that doesn't mean that your pitch is going into a void. I'm gonna look at it, and if it's something that is relevant, I'm gonna get back to you. It's good. You can sell your thing. You can make a case for yourself, but also you got to kind of let it go if it's not working. So some people, usually not founders, but often publicists hired by founders, will be very persistent even when I've given a pretty clear no on something. And they'll be like, "But what about this? What about this?" It's like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm not interested in this right now. It doesn't mean that I don't like you or I don't think that your company is going to have a story at some point. It's just like, maybe this angle that you're thinking of doesn't quite work for me. So like, let that one go. Maybe there's another way of talking about this that would make more sense. So being able to like let things go, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the road. Like we can continue to have an ongoing relationship. You're going to keep having new news, but like just appreciate that like we have certain criteria for stories and stages of companies that we just have to go by, and like just trying to like have some understanding about that, and also like we're not in control of a lot of it, like I'm just the writer, like I don't have final say over what actually gets published. So like we might spend some time talking about something. I might have expressed a lot of interest in something, and then for whatever reasons, things that are happening in the news cycle, we can't use it in the way that we imagine. And that's too bad, but you're going to have more opportunities along the way. So just keep going. But these things happen.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. So now we're going to move on to our questions from the audience. And our first question comes from Cordelia. And the question is it enough to present credentials to the reporter or journalist and then follow their leads to get story ideas from them? The way I understand that is it enough to just present yourself to journalists, say, hey, I'm an expert in this and this and this, and then hope that you guys are able to identify what's interesting there? Or do I have to come with a specific idea already in mind?
And I think that Adam and I are probably pretty similar on this, which is, or certainly for me, it's, absolutely introduce yourself and tell us what you're about, but you're probably not going to be written about immediately. It's very much something that goes into a database and then kind of gets looked back on.
Yeah, again, like this just goes to the idea of thinking about developing relationships rather than having, this like one-time pitch opportunity. So if you come up to me and say like, Adam, I noticed that you're really interested in quantum computing. Our people are experts in this particular piece of that. If you ever want to talk to somebody about, that aspect of this industry, let us know. We're the best at it. And then, if we're chatting, like what about, I mean, you can say like, what about this might interest you? What about this might interest your publication? And if I know people a little bit, I'm happy. I enjoy kind of like brainstorming, like, oh, like what do you think the angle of this story would be? Let's play around with that a little bit. But I'm not gonna suggest that out of the blue, but if we're talking a little bit, if you're clear about sort of the knowledge, the expertise that you have, that you're able to share with me, happy to like brainstorm and develop some ideas with you.
Great insight. So next question, quick and easy one. How strong is the interest in dual use technologies? By dual use, we mean something that can be used for civilian capabilities, but also for military uses.
Sorry, for me, I'd say quite strong. That's a big interest right now. And yeah, I mean, across Europe, there's more and more companies that are positioning themselves as dual use. Unfortunately, I don't think the situation in Ukraine is going away anytime soon, which is continuing to drive sort of interest news in that sector. So, I think it's really relevant for us.
Lucy?
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. I would say whenever there's the intersection of a lot of money being raised and like a strong geopolitical interest, we'll be interested in that, whether it's dual use or something else. But yeah, absolutely very interesting right now.
Perfect. And so then we have another question from Gonzalo. And here at the Scaling Club, we have teams coming from all EU countries. And then the question is there any particular interest in covering startups from underrepresented countries that are typically off the radar?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly for us, like we want to know the more about that, the better. I would say it's definitely helpful if you could give us a little bit more context, kind of fill in some of those gaps that we might be less familiar with. We at Tech.eu, we cut about a lot to a lot of different countries. So if there are events where you might see us there or that we could be invited to, absolutely let us know. And also, there's often a story in itself in that, whether it's like an emerging economy or whether there are interesting like environmental or economic conditions in that place that mean that it's less of a startup environment. Yeah, tell us more about that. Tell us more about what it's like creating a startup in somewhere like that.
Great. And then we do have another question. How do you decide what story to offer as an exclusive versus embargo versus just a press release being sent out on the day? Adam, you have some insight.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to also on that last question. Yeah, sometimes like stories about kind of out of like less covered places. A novelty factor is something that can help a story go over. So, as Lucy said, there's this like great startup from Portugal, or southern Spain, or someplace that we don't necessarily hear about all the time in the US. Like that can be its own angle, or like here's an ecosystem that we don't know about. And then the question was, how do you decide if something's like an exclusive, an embargo, a press release? I mean, for me, honestly, press releases have very little value. the news that they're offering it, well, by their nature, everybody else has this story, so I'm probably not going to cover it. If it's in a press release, it's probably not for me. I want something that you're not sending to everybody else.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
And Lucy, what's your opinion on embargo versus exclusive versus press release?
Sorry, I just had to vacate a room due to a booking. Embargo versus exclusive versus press release. I think it probably depends on the story. We would love just kind of like random intros that are individualized and personalized when it's for stories that or startups that might be more relevant to a feature. So I would say, again, it's a case of familiarize yourself probably with our features and our longer form stories. For funding news, a press release is fine. And again, exclusives, whether it's like an exclusive press release or an exclusive interview or an exclusive article in that language, again, we love them.
Yeah, awesome. And so I think we have time just about for our last question. Is about the electric vehicle industry. How do you see the EV industry in the next decade in the US and the EU, keeping in mind China's dominance? And are these topics interesting for you?
I see. I can't see Lucy, so I'll just say, I'm interested in EVs. Obviously, in the US, we're in a funny place with that right now in terms of like the the government's trying to push us off of this path. Ultimately, I think industry has decided that this is the way that things are going. The technology is clearly moving toward EVs or some sort of alternate fuel hybrid vehicles. And so to me, that's inevitable. We're not going to get those Chinese cars anytime soon. It's amazing that they're coming out, and maybe Europe will get some of the benefit of that. So it's definitely an interesting space. It's really the landscape is very much in flux in the US. So.
Very much in flux, but in theory interested.
Yeah, I would agree.
Great.
I think. Sorry, can I?
Go ahead.
I was going to say the same things, really. Just that it's something that we're interested in, and whenever an industry is in flux, then people always have opinions about that, and people are always looking for different ways to navigate it. So absolutely, if you have comments or expertise, then get in touch. I'd also say that materials sovereignty is such a hot button issue in Europe right now, so that wherever that and the EV stories intersect, that's something that we're always looking to cover.
Yeah, spot on for the timeliness. Okay, well, with that, I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists. I think we all give you a virtual round of applause for all of this very considerable amount of knowledge that we've now shared with all of our attendees and participants here. So thank you so much for taking the time. And Adam, I also know that it's super early in the morning for you. So thank you to that. And then do make sure to connect to Adam and Lucy and visit them, see them at events / in Oslo Tech Week if you will be attending. And then make sure to keep an eye on your emails, because we will also be sending out a recap follow-up of this webinar, which will also include a PR recommendations material for EIC Scaling Club members about how to approach PR, which is a lot of what these tips that have been discussed today will also include, as well as some press release templates, pitch email templates, and more. So without further ado, then I would like to say thank you very much. And Adam also has something to say.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to say my final tip. When you're connecting on LinkedIn, don't just send a connection request. write something, tell me who you are and why you want to connect with me. So not just a blank request. Tell me who you are.
Such a good tip.
Yes, I would agree with that. Thanks so much, Julia, and looking forward to hearing from everyone.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you so much.